Alright, we need to talk about high school dramas. When you haven't reached high school yet, they feel like the epitome of the teenage experience, right? With boys, drama, and parties. But then, when you're finished with high school, you watch these dramas and wonder if anyone actually goes through all of these experiences in high school. It doesn't help either that these experiences tend to be seen through a very exclusively white and heterosexual lens. So when you're looking to diversify American movies, though, coming-of-age movies are actually a really great place to start. Like, the genre is uniquely suited to exploring identity in a way that a lot of other genres just aren't. Coming-of-age movies are inherently laser-focused on the interplay between a very limited cast of characters and can therefore develop their identities well in a really short amount of time. Never Have I Ever is a Netflix series that took the internet by storm in April 2020. The story centers around the life experiences of Devi, a high school sophomore from Sherman Oaks, California, who wants nothing more than to be a popular kid, and she will do anything she needs to do in order to get there. Devi's struggling to accept the sudden death of her father the previous year, which left her so traumatized that she lost the use of her legs for 3 months. And the recent introduction of her cousin Kamala to their grieving family is definitely not helping Devi's mental state. Now entering her sophomore year of high school, Devi swears that she's going to fix her reputation. And she's going to do it first by losing her virginity to the hottest boy at her school, Paxton Hall Yoshida. Supported by a lively cast of friends and family members, Devi tries to navigate her sophomore year of high school as she gains and loses her friends, enters and exits relationships, and tries desperately to reclaim her social identity. Even though the series centers on typical coming-of-age experiences like losing your virginity or going to your first house party, it never does so in a way that feels demeaning to Devi's personhood. Devi's socially incompetent at times, but she's socially incompetent because she's been trying to repress her trauma instead of taking a healthy path out of her suffering. And it's no surprise that much of her stubbornness and refusal of help comes out of her traditional Indian upbringing, which isn't always supportive of seeking help for mental health issues, or any personal issues, to be completely honest. But her upbringing is never inherently presented as a character flaw, and this series never wants to frame it that way. Believe me when I say that Devi has many real character flaws that have nothing to do with her culture. She's impulsive, always puts herself above the safety of others, and refuses to accept help from anyone in her life, no matter how close they are to her. Each of the 2 release seasons are broken up into major conflicts that last anywhere from 2 to 4 episodes, with Devi being either the center of the conflict or directly aggravating it. The overarching cause for pretty much every conflict in the series is Devi's desperation for approval that she thinks she would receive from her peers. For example, the conflict in the first 2 episodes of season 2 deals with the culmination of Devi's search for a boyfriend who would elevate her social status. She's caught in a situation where she has 2 boys who would want to date her, and she doesn't want to make a choice between them. While dating Paxton would make Devi feel more accomplished because she managed to snag a boy who's much more physically attractive than her, Devi feels more comfortable being close with Ben, her longtime academic rival, because of their shared interests and personal history. Instead of making a choice and dealing with the consequences of closing one door in order to pursue another, Devi chooses to string both of them along into thinking that they were her only boyfriend until Ben and Paxton awkwardly meet in Devi's bedroom. When the situation ends in an inevitable fight between her, Ben, and Paxton, Devi does not acknowledge the selfishness of her actions, and instead pushes Paxton into the street where he's hit by an incoming car, a physical manifestation of the hurt that she caused him. Another thing that makes Never Have I Ever stand out to me is the development of the supporting characters that frame Devi's life. Devi's home life and relationship with her family is handled with surprising nuance. Her mom, Nalini, and her cousin, Kamala, are fully developed characters with their own internal struggles and motivations, which adds even more depth to Devi's world. Because so many of the important moments for character growth in this show happen at Devi's house, we get to see authentic interactions between the 3 of them in real time. And as someone who has an Indian mother, Nalini's hot and cold approach to showing her love for Devi is a representation of Indian familial love that I've never seen so directly on screen before. Nalini is not the overbearing Asian mom who doesn't let her daughter have any fun, and to claim that she is to greatly misunderstand her character. She is struggling with grief after the death of her husband and tries to release it in the only way she knows how to, through micromanaging Devi's life. Nalini's love for Devi is confusing and sometimes violent, but it's indicative of a struggle that many Indian mothers silently go through. The only way Nalini knows how to handle her trauma is to put Devi and Kamala first, even at the detriment of her own health and mental well-being. I'm not at all exaggerating when I say that every Indian person loves to hate a person like Kamala. She's the model child who's getting a PhD in a respectable field, biology in her case, from a prestigious university. She's light-skinned and has European passing features. She's nothing but polite and deferential to her elders. Essentially, she's the gold standard for your parents to compare you against. And Devi immediately picks up on that. And it's Kamala's cultural attractiveness that makes Devi initially resent her. In season 1, at least, Kamala is the perfect Indian daughter with a secret that's tearing her apart. She's been secretly dating a non-Indian man, and she fears the day she'll have to break up with him to pursue a more socially acceptable arranged marriage. I think Kamala's character development is important because it gives real emotional depth to the person at the cultural function that you absolutely loathe because they seem to have their life completely figured out. But the show goes out of the way to remind you that even the Kamalas of the world don't have everything figured out. They're still making mistakes, and just like you, as they try to find out who they are in the world. And once Devi tries to understand Kamala outside of the caricature of the perfect Indian daughter, do they become much closer, to the point where Devi starts to value her as an older sister. Speaking of cultural values, I want to pay special attention to the Ganesh Puja episode because of how it highlights the complicated feelings that second-generation immigrants often feel towards their parents' heritage. Devi knows that she's Indian, but she doesn't consider herself overly Indian in the way that she assumes other Indian teenagers do. There's some really interesting moments in this episode where Devi has to confront her relationship with her culture. At the beginning of the episode, Devi sneaks away from the aunties who are currently ambushing her mom and Kamala and ends up watching a dance performance. She remarks to the girl next to her that the dancers would look dorky if they performed a Bollywood dance anywhere other than a Ganesh Puja ceremony. The girl responds that the lead dancer is her sister and that her dance group had actually performed on a float at the Macy's Day Parade, jabbing at Devi that she's actually the dorky one for thinking less of her sister's prowess. Devi comes out of this interaction with a bruised ego, but leaves the dance with her head high. She then runs into her friend Harish, who's several years older than her, and asks him why he of all people would go to Ganesh Puja if he didn't have to. Harish says that going away to college made him honestly miss the experience of Ganesh Puja. And he leaves Devi with the statement that he could have gone off to college and been the insecure Indian guy who hates doing Indian things, but that's a terrible personality that he didn't want for himself. And when Devi has never felt more uncomfortable in her own skin, Paxton catches sight of her in her sari when he gets out of swim practice. And Devi feels repulsed that he caught her wearing something so un-American and so uncool, when Paxton seems genuinely interested and even compliments her looks. What ties this show together is the fact that Never Have I Ever, as a piece of art, makes it abundantly clear that it never wanted to completely assimilate Devi into American culture, nor did it want to segregate her from it. I'm not saying that the show is perfect in how it represents its characters from diverse backgrounds, but its representation of the Indian-American coming-of-age experience in particular feels more like an acknowledgement of diversity and a breath of fresh air from the generally white, American-centric high school dramas of this generation and previous generations. I mean, the show is called Never Have I Ever for a reason. It's based on a game that's used to measure how much your peers have experimented with quote-unquote adult behaviors. And it's extremely aware of the differences between the ideals of Indian and American adolescence, the first being focused on conformity to strict cultural rules, and the second being focused on individuals developing their own wants and needs. The series makes the viewer painfully aware of these differences in culture every time Devi falls on her face while trying to act in a way that she thinks her white peers would approve of. But if the show was focused on glorifying American adolescence and highlighting only the negative aspects of Indian cultural values by comparison, it wouldn't be taking the time to point out the flaws in both schools of thought. And that's what makes Never Have I Ever so interesting to me. It held a magnifying glass up to the Indian-American coming-of-age experience and allowed the characters to place their own judgment on the internal and interpersonal conflicts that came up.